Hello, my name is Matthew Harris. Today I have the honor of interviewing Mr. George Yost. Today is February the 3rd, 2017. We are doing this with the Mississippi Valley Library District. And today we are in the American Legion meeting room here at the Fairmont City Library. This is Mr. Yost here.
It's Yost.
Yost. When and where were you born?
I was born out in Kansas in 1922, and in May the 9th, and lived on a farm but then after my mother was Marie Yost, and my dad was John Yost, and we lived out there on the farm. And of course, I was raised on the farm, and we farmed worked for my uncle. We're 640 acres, and it was in the wintertime. We'd always get a bunch of cattle and fatten them up through the winter, and then ship them off, for Kansas City or wherever the market was for a thing. But and then I stayed on the farm. Of course, when I was only probably 10, 12 years old. I had a team of horses and done farm work. And of course, nowadays, it's a completely different ball game. But we used to harrow the ground, plow it, and then after years later, I started working for my uncle. After I graduated out of grade school, I went to my grade school. When I went, there was a little schoolhouse. It was 3 miles from our farmhouse, and so I went to the 7th grade through this little old schoolhouse out in the country, and there was probably 14 kids. I imagine about as many as we had in school, because it's a small school. But otherwise, that's where I got my, and I still got the picture of the old schoolhouse. It's still out there in Kansas, and they used it. I think some farmer bought it down and use it for grain, for storing grain in it or something. But we had, the kids then days was all farm kids. So otherwise they would get these old horses out of the sale pavilion down there and break them to ride. And they was a rough bunch of kids. And it was just a complete different ballgame. Every kid should be raised on the farm and learn how to cope with the different things. Of course, today, everything is so much different, but otherwise, I think it's my education and that, I think it all comes from the time I served out there on the farm. But stayed on the farm there until I went, called for service, and I was 17 years old, and you couldn't, they wouldn't take you in a thing till you was 18. Of course, they come out with a selective service. At that time, they was drafting people in the Army. And so after you got to be 18 years old, they sent you out a slip of paper. And so I hadn't got my selective service paper yet, but my cousin, he was in the Army. He was an officer, and he told me, he says, to go and enlist before you get drafted. He said, enlist in the Air Force, because he said, man, stay out of this infantry. It's just rough. He says, don't get in the infantry, get in the Air Force. So otherwise, to get in the Air Force, I had to get my mother had to sign because I wasn't old enough. So this kid I went to school with, well, he was a little bit older than I was, but he was being drafted, and so he says, let's go down and enlist in the Air Force, and that way we beat the draft, you know. So, of course, he had to enlist because I wasn't old enough yet, but my mom, she signed for me, so we went down. I was, off of the farm, I went to, was in the slack time, they was building an air base down in Salina, Kansas for these big B-29 airplanes. And so they was needing truck drivers. So I went down there and drove a dump truck on for a construction company down there building the air base. And so otherwise, then we wanted to go down and enlist. And so otherwise, when I enlisted, Mom took us down there to Junction City, Kansas to enlist. And so when I went down there and enlisted, well, he says they probably won't call you for maybe 6 months, you know. So, well, that sounds good. I'll go and finish driving the truck and that. And so when we signed up Friday, Mom took us down to Junction City, Kansas, and signed up down there. And so when I asked him, I said, when we have to report? And he says that was on a Friday. She took us down. She said, well, make it Monday morning. So, man, that was a fast thing because I had to do everything and get everything straightened out before we went into service. So otherwise, we got everything straightened out. But when I had to go down and take a physical then, and when he says we'll enlist, we maybe can stay together, you know, through the service. So otherwise, when we went down there, well, we had to take a physical, and so it was summertime, and of course Kansas is hot anyway, and I was drinking a lot of soda, and when they went to our physical, well, I had too much sugar, so I got rejected, and he passed, and so that one day was the whole thing. The next day I passed it too, but then we was one day apart, and so he shipped out one day ahead of me, and he went one place and I went the other, and never seen each other till after the war. So we didn't pay to enlist together. So, but anyway, after enlisted, well, they sent me to, where to go? Well, anyway, down to Kentucky, and took one basic training down there, and then I went on to signed up for AM school, and the only trouble with AM school, well, they only started every so many months, you know, because they had a big school down in Carolinas, and so otherwise I was well, it was anyway, I had to wait till the school started the program, and so otherwise they put me in the MPs, and so I was in a guard squadron first. I had to wait about 2 or 3 months to get till the school opened up before I could go to school. So otherwise I was just fresh out of in the Army, and they put me in this guard in the MPs, and so my one job was to check the gates. You know, they put us down at the gate, and you had to check the passes, the kids, the soldiers going in and out, and so there was cars, staff cars, and so I signed a staff car out, and the thing was stolen, and so man, they jumped all over me. And if I had any rank, I guess I'd have got busted, but I didn't have no rank, so otherwise they chewed me out on that. So then the next time I was up there pulling guard duty in front of headquarters, and so the general was coming in, so I thought, well, I'll make sure I'm at the other end of my tour when the general comes, so I don't be around him, because I mean, man, you know, when you first get in the service, man, them officers are big wheels, you know. So otherwise, I seen this staff car coming down, had the flag on the front fender, and I thought, well, I'm going to be at the other end. So then he sat down there in the car, so by the time I had to walk my duty, so I got down there in front of the dang staff car, and he opened up the door, and they chewed me out because I wasn't down there to salute him and open the door for him and everything. And so I said, I guess I'd have got busted again if I'd had any rank. But I was glad to get out of that MP. Then they opened up this school, so they sent me down to Carolina's, Goldsboro, North Carolina for AM school. And so then I went through AM school, and that covered the airplane from the front end to the back end. I mean, you had to take it apart, put it together, and learn all the things. So it was interesting. I liked that kind of work. But otherwise, you'd tear one down, and then you had to put it back together. You know, in each class, like the wing tanks, and I mean the fuel tanks in the wings and stuff like that, you know. And you had to learn the props and how the props changed, the pitch on the props and all that. And it was interesting, but I don't know how long it lasted, but after I graduated out of that school, well, then they would come along with the well, after graduate school, well, otherwise I had to pull line duty. To graduate, you had to, well, I could graduate out of school, but then the other thing, you had 2 weeks of line duty. You had to check airplanes and make pre-flight them, and then these was all flying airplanes. But then the pilot would come out and he said, "You work on that airplane?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, he says, "Come on, let's get in and take a ride." Well, I said, "You had to fly the plane, so you made sure you had the things checked." But anyway, I had 2 weeks of that. Well, I decided I didn't want that, so I signed up for gunnery school, which my mother didn't know I signed up, but I signed up for gunnery school. So then that took into with right down my line with the guns, man. So otherwise, it's when I went to the gunnery school, at first they start you off with a little air rifle. And you had these little ducks that fly along like in the carnivals, you know, and you had to shoot them little ducks off and knock them down. And so you shot that for a couple of days, and then you went to that was a BB gun. Then you went to a rifle, and then you had to shoot targets on the rifle. And after you took that, then you went to a shotgun. And then you had the skeet shooting, and all which was really nice. And then they, of course, learning with the air when you're flying along. When you got, they call it, you had to lead your target, because your bullet goes into an arc. You know, when you're shooting, it goes into an arc. You don't shoot, it don't go straight. You know, it arcs on. So you had to lead it so many rads, they call it, so many rads, and you had to learn all this stuff while you was taking your training. And so then they put you on after you went through the rifles and that, and then you went into the shotguns, took your skeet shooting and all this, and they shoot these clay birds out, and so you got into a moving target, is what they call it. So it's a complete different thing than a standing target. It's a moving target. So they put you in a truck with a ring in it. You stood in the back of this truck, and you had a shotgun, and you had an instructor behind you, and you had 24 shells. and they had this track, was a mile track, so it took about 2 minutes, I guess, to get around this track. And they had these 24 houses, and they had, when you was shooting, you had to load the traps. And when you was, you had to take your turn down there. But these traps was fixed where they had a wire across where the truck went. And every time it hit that wire, it would shoot the bird out, because you had the trap. So they would go in all different directions, so you had to lead them to whichever way the bird was going. You had to, so you got, they checked you on how many birds you got and all that. So you had 24 shells, but you had to get them, and there was 24 houses. So otherwise you got 24 shots in 2 minutes. So otherwise you was one shot right after another. But all you could do is just turn the thing, and I used a pump gun, or you could have an automatic, but I took the pump gun because it was always natural for me to do that. So otherwise you'd throw the thing back and the instructor would throw a shell in it and you'd shoot. Well, a lot of times you'd shoot before you even got the damn thing closed. And the fire, smoke would fly out of the side of the gun, but otherwise you had to get these targets because they come different directions. You didn't know where they was going, pick them up and shoot them. So you got grades on how many you got out of them shots. So I done pretty good. I get probably 20, maybe 21 out of them things. And so, of course, otherwise, if you didn't, well, they flunked you out. So otherwise you had to try to keep up on the thing, but otherwise it was nice on the, but then when went from that moving base then they put you in a tower, and they shot you up in the air about 100, I get probably maybe 100, 200 feet or something in the air, but you was in a turret that you would be in like in an airplane. And then you had 2 shotguns on the side of you, like it was regular guns, like 50 caliber guns. And otherwise then they'd shoot them targets out of the tower, and you had to use your sight then in the turret to pick up this bird going out, them clay birds, and shoot them. So you got, everything was always credited. And of course, when we was learning the 50 calibers, well, it was, they had a track, something like Fairmont down there, racetrack. They had a Jeep, but it was in a concrete circle where it couldn't get out. It had to stay in there, and so otherwise they had a big sheet. They would put this sheet up, and just a cloth sheet, white sheet, and they pull it with this Jeep, and this Jeep would go around the track, and as it come by you, you had to shoot at it, and so it was flying by when you had to, and your bullets that you had out of your guns of 50 calibers, well, they was painted. Like you maybe have red and the other would have black and that, and of course every time you hit that sheet, it would leave a print. So after they got through that, well then you had to take that sheet and count how many red dots you had or blue dots, whatever you had on the sheet. And of course it was all graded on this for your target. So that was the thing with gunnery school. But then after took all this training, well, then they sent me to Fort Myers, Florida. And went down to Fort Myers, well, then otherwise that was, well, it was all training with the guns and all that. And then we started getting ready then to go in for cruise. So otherwise we went to from Florida. Well, after we finished our training down there with the gunnery school, well, you had got these AT-6s and just a pilot in an open cockpit, and so you had one gun that you was in the back of a plane, and this pilot, these pilots, they wanted to go in combat, but they were stuck down there with their training these gunners, so they was kind of aggravated anyway, and so otherwise they'd get you in there, and of course not being used to flying, well, they would try to do all kinds of maneuvers and so when you got in this dang old AT-6 and they had the only thing you stood in the back end of it, there's no intercom between you and the pilot. And he'd always say, when you get done, well, give him a nod, and he would leave the formation, you know, after you shot your shells. And so I figured when I do that, well, when you're standing in this daggone cockpit, and the only thing you got a strap around your stomach, and you got a snap and a snap to the floor. And that's all what's holding you in a damn airplane up here, and you're standing there, it's okay, but this gun is on a swivel. So I figured when I got done shooting, he says, when you get done, well, nod. So I thought, well, okay, I'll get this gun, I'll get it down and anchored down before I give him the nod, you know. Well, he was watching my clips up there. When that last clip went out of the gun, well, he just pulled me, pulled up and put me in a dive, and man, I didn't know where the thunder I was at then, because I hadn't done too much flying, and when I was looking up, I was looking down, and I mean, I didn't know one end from the other, and so we got back down to the ground. Well, he said, well, how'd you do? I said, okay, I guess all right, but I guess I probably looked like a white sheet of paper there, because I felt like, and if you got sick, well, they washed you out, you know. So otherwise, man, I put up with everything I could to keep from throwing up, and so he got me out of that. So otherwise, I got a good grade on that. So otherwise, they stepped me into being a gunner. Anyway, so then they had to take all that gunnery stuff then. But then from Fort Myers, well, after we finished down there, we started getting into forming groups then. So we got on the damn train down in Fort Myers, Florida, a troop train. It took us 5 days and 4 nights to go to Salt Lake City, Utah. And you couldn't get on you never got off of the blame train, because you had to cook everything right on the train there. And so after we got out there to Salt Lake City, well, then otherwise there was another stage out there you went through getting groups together. And so one little thing would happen out there in Salt Lake City was another kid out there, you had to do your own laundry. So we had this, out there in the air base in Salt Lake City had a wash house. And so otherwise we went down we was going to wash our clothes in the wash house. It was an old washer. It was like a barrel. It was wood, and otherwise it would tumble your clothes and wash your clothes, but they had a divider in the middle so 2 people could wash their clothes. So otherwise we went down to PX and got a box of soap, and so we come back and he says, how much soap put in there? I said, I don't know, it was a dozen. I never will forget a dozen. And I went dumped the box in there, so we dumped the box. Well, when every time that thing come over, there was a big layer of suds come out. Pretty soon we was waist deep in soap. Suds. Well, it flooded the whole thing out of there. So finally we got that all straightened out and got it closed out. But I learned then you didn't dump the whole damn box. But otherwise, that was from Salt Lake City. Then we went from Salt Lake City. Then we went to shipped us to Tucson, Arizona. We went down to Tucson, and we took stages down there. Then, well, we had, when we was in Salt Lake City, they made a crew. So there's like, our crew was like, well, there were 5 gunners and well, you had radio operators and all, it was all signed for this one plane, pilot and co-pilot. So otherwise you trained with them and in Tucson, and that was the first stage of training. And of course, otherwise it was over Arizona is nothing but cactus and sagebrush out there. So otherwise you had to, then they assigned you, when we didn't have the airplane, all we had was like a 2-engine planes. I don't know, two engine small planes, but otherwise you had guns on it. You had to go and shoot so many shells out every day. So you took this flight out there and shoot anything was on the ground out there. So you shoot the cactus and everything else. That was about the only thing to shoot at. They'd have maybe old boxes or something out there where you shot at, you know. And a lot of times these little burros, little wild donkeys out there, you shoot at them. But otherwise, if you had to shoot so many shells, and a lot of times where you just took them things, you threw them out the window, you never even fired them because you got tired of shooting, you know. But otherwise, you had to shoot so many shells there. That was one phase, and then they sent you down to Alamogordo, New Mexico. That was another phase. You know, it's 3 phases you went through to get it. So we was down in Alamogordo, and when we was in tents down there, and I dang one morning woke up and the snow was on the ground. I mean, we was in these blank tents like froze dead. But otherwise, that was close to Mexico. So if we got a pass or anything, when we go down to Mexico, you can go over to Mexico. Well, at that time, everything was rationed here in the States, but over in Mexico, you could go over there and you could buy anything with what you wanted, but you couldn't bring it back. You had to wear it back. Like if you wanted to buy shoes, well, you could buy shoes over there, but everything over here was rationed, you know, and so but you had to wear the shoes back. You couldn't bring them back. You had to wear them back. So a lot of people had cars. A lot of soldiers had cars. Well, they needed tires where you couldn't buy a tire over here, but you could go over to Mexico and buy a tire. But then they had to put them on the wheels and drive them back. You couldn't bring them back. So it was kind of a thing. And then you had to turn your money into $2 bills. So you couldn't take nothing but a $2 bill across this thing, you know, because I guess for counterfeit or something. I don't know what that deal was, but otherwise we'd go over there they had these nightclubs and stuff like that where you could spend some time on, because when you're young you could always find things to do. What you probably wasn't supposed to do, but otherwise, then when we got down in Mexico, down in Alamogordo, well, they sent us to Harrington, Kansas. That was our final stage up in Harrington, and that's when we got our plane. And they gave us a B-24 then, and I don't know what time of the year, but that morning we got there in Kansas, well, it was about, I guess, 7 or 8 below zero, and it was blizzard, man. The snow was flying, and they had these big warmers on our airplanes out there to keep the engines warm so they could start them. And so we had to, of course, through your training, that you always had your uniforms was sheep-lined coats and pants and all that, because otherwise you got an altitude, it was cold up there. And so otherwise we had all these, your heated suit, you plugged it into the airplane, and it wasn't like an underwear, but it was heated. And you had snaps where you put your gloves on, and you snapped them on there, and that kept your hands warm. Your shoes the same way. You had these boots, you put them on, you had snaps on them, so otherwise you could turn the regulator and regulate your temperature to keep your thing. Well, we got all that there in Harrington, and we got out there and, well, we was all dressed for this cold weather, and so left to Harrington, Kansas, and we went to West Palm Beach, Florida. Well, it only took about an hour or so to get from Harrington to Florida, and man, you're going from, say, 4 or 5 below zero to about 80. We had these big old heavy shoes on. Landed down there in Florida, man, I never forget when I looked out when that runway, the moss was growing on the mud. Couldn't believe it was much difference than that. We shed clothes in a big hurry. But of course, then we were stationed down there in Miami for, I don't know, for a while. I know we just laid around there waiting for orders to get shipping overseas. And so we was there about, I don't know, probably 2 weeks, I guess. And all you done was just stayed around there till you got ready to ship. And so then we was in West Palm Beach, Florida. Well, we finally got orders to ship out. So, but there was, I think it was 34 planes, I think, in our group. And so otherwise we got ready to leave. Well, everybody was, the pilots were going to fly over. They wasn't going to fly over to England. So every pilot was on his own. And so otherwise, when we left West Palm Beach, Florida, we were supposed to go to Trinidad. And so as soon as we got in the air, I heard the pilot and co-pilot and them talking and says, hey, we're going to stop in Puerto Rico. We ain't going to Trinidad, we're going to stop in Puerto Rico first. So they pulled down in Puerto Rico where we stopped over there. Well, I never will forget, they loaded up with some booze they bought. And so they give us never will forget, 150 proof rum. And so I had this plain rum. And he talked about getting something what was so hot. I mean, of course, I wasn't no drinker anyway. And but meantime, before this, well, when we left our train over there in Florida, well, there was a bicycle that was left out there on right next to the ramp. Our Rutland where we was taking off, so looked at that thing, I said, man, grab that bicycle. So jumped out of the airplane, we threw that bicycle in the back of the daggone thing, well, on the back of the airplane, and by that time, well, we was out on the runway taking off, so we stole the bicycle. And so we had that dang bicycle, then while I was going to Florida, well, I never will forget, we was drinking that daggone rum, and I know I had a few shots of that rum, and I'd start to pedal that bicycle, and the daggone pedal would hit the ground, wobbling around, I guess. But anyway, we finally got over to that was from Puerto Rico, then went into Trinidad. And so we was in Trinidad for a while, and I know they had pineapple. And these guys would take these pineapples, and of course they had PXs, and of course we'd go in there and harass everybody in the PX with the gals and waiters and girls, clerks and that. But anyway, we took these these I forgot where I'm even starting over, but anyway, we got I know in Trinidad, well, it was we left Trinidad, well, we went to Brazil. Yeah, so I never will forget going over the Amazon River. And man, that thing is a big river. I mean, going into South America. And we was there in South America for a while, and there was over there, the little natives down there would had these little monkeys. They would go out in the jungles there and get these little monkeys. It's about like a squirrel monkey. You know, this little, like a squirrel. Well, I don't know, I bought one of them from one of them guys. I don't know what I give for it, but anyway, they was selling them. And so it took a little monkey, and so we had him in the airplane, and so they said feed him bananas. So otherwise we got a bunch of bananas, and we fed him bananas and different things. And so he rode with us for quite a while. We had him when from South America, we went into Africa, and we was in South Africa at first, and the little monkey was long, but when we was flying, well, he'd get up with the pilot and the co-pilot, and he'd get up there on the instrument panels, and he'd see himself in them instruments, you know, and man, he'd grab them little toggle switches, and he'd see he's going to fly an airplane, you know, but he couldn't pull them little switches, you know, so otherwise they kind of took care of him up there, and they had on the side of the plane, there was like a place where they put their maps, and it was probably about a foot wide up there, and he'd get up on top of that, and that was where he'd stay, because I think the vibration from the airplane would put him to sleep, so he'd get up there and he'd lay up there on top of that case. And so, but then when these different places, well, you had to guard your airplane, because otherwise you couldn't leave that airplane, because, I mean, somebody was always massage it, you know, I mean, tamper with it. So otherwise, we had this, were heated suits. I always had my boot. I'd always put him in that little boot, and that way it'd keep him warm, you know. And so somebody had to guard the airplanes all the time, and so otherwise on the trip, before we got to England, well, the radio operator, he was from New York. He was kind of an oddball anyway, but anyway, he was supposed to be guarding the airplane while the little monkey was in the boot, and so he was rolled over on the daggone boot and smashed my little monkey. Well, he paralyzed him in the rear end. He couldn't, had to drag his feet, so finally we just up and shot him, got rid of him. Poor little thing, but otherwise that was the end of my monkey. I mean, but I don't know what we'd done if we'd got him to England, because we wouldn't have enough to feed him anyway, because you can't get nothing over there in England. But otherwise, when we went from South Africa, then we went up to North Africa. And of course, South Africa was, man, that's rough down there in South Africa. It was hot and dry and mosquitoes, and we was there for, well, we got, I guess it was, well, when we got ready to take off, after staying there for a day or two, well, they couldn't get one of the engines, the RPM, couldn't get one of the damn engines to get up to RPM, so otherwise there was like a fuse or something there was a box there with 4 of them. Each engine had a plug on it, and otherwise we couldn't take off with the thing, so the pilot, he said it'd take maybe a month or so before you could get a part from the States down there. And so otherwise, after a couple of days, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, if we're going to get out of this daggone place, he says, somebody's going to have to pull a raid on a plane out there and get one of them computers out of that plane. So he says, somebody have to find a plane that somebody ain't guarding. And so after a couple of days, well, one of the boys found a plane and he got that daggone computer out, and so he plugged it in, and so now we got 4 engines now, so otherwise we took off. Well, then we had to go from South America up to North Africa and up around Marrakech. So we was up there then for a while, and I know up there in Marrakech we bumped around town there, and I remember they had these guys with little carts, and otherwise you get in a cart and they'd pull you around, you know. So otherwise you go through the city. Well, we'd buy these get these guys, they'd pull you this cart around, you know, and otherwise we thought that was really cool, you know. But then from there, well, then you had to fly from South Africa or North Africa. Then we had to go to Wales. Well, we had to go to England, but what we had to do, you couldn't fly over Spain, so you had to go around Spain. So we had to make a detour around Spain because the air traffic wouldn't allow you over their air. And so they landed in Wales. That was an island off of Scotland. So we landed in Wales, and then we stayed there for about a day or two, and then went from Wales to Scotland. And we landed in Scotland there for a while, and then we flew back from Scotland, and then we flew down to our base in England. I think it was Attlebridge, England or something, but over in England, the air bases, there were so many airplanes over there and bases, they made these air bases right on the farm grounds. So otherwise, wasn't runways and fixed up in that, well, the farmers used it for farm ground, you know, so they farmed on different patches, and otherwise these farmers, I mean, well, it was, I don't know how many planes was over there, how many groups, but God, it was a bunch of, because I know when you go on a mission, it'd be about 1,000 airplanes up there in the air at one time, you know, but otherwise, we was in these, after landed in Scotland, we flew down to England there, and so we had to take our training down. We was down there about 3 days and before we got our mission. And so this air base was 40, well, it was about, I guess it was, well, it was about 30, I think it was about 34 planes, I think we had in our group. But then there's all groups all around it, so every time you got ready for a mission, well, and then of course over in England, the fog was so terrible over there. In the mornings, well, you could hardly see the dang airplanes, and otherwise they'd have a mission scheduled, well, you had to go, so they'd line up out there and they'd send them airplanes off on a mission, and you was in that daggone fog. You'd have to top that fog. Well, they went on like half-minute intervals is when you took off. Well, a half inch behind, and of course the pilot was supposed to know where he's doing. He's supposed to take a certain heading, because you couldn't see the outboard engines on that thing for the fog. When you take it off, you just flew blind then up through this fog till you go maybe 10,000 or maybe 9 or 7 or 8,000 feet before you would top the fog, you know. Then you popped out, and boy, it's clear and clear up there. But to get up there, well, man, it was rough because you couldn't know whether there was an airplane ahead of you or no place. So otherwise, it was, once in a while, it would be 2 of them collide up there in the air, but most of them, pilots, I said, the pilots today, with, like over in England ain't that big anyway, and you put 1,000 airplanes up there in the air at one time, you got to know where the hell you're going, because otherwise you'd be running into each other. But then they form wings, and you had to get your group together, and then they like take 3 or 4 groups and make a wing, and then they'd start them all out were loaded with bombs going across to bomb Germany. And each one you had your targets and all that where you was going. And it was like, maybe, I don't know, there's so many airplanes up there, and they get to line up on these targets. Each group had a different target. And so after you went across the channel, but there'd be 1,000 airplanes and just going over constantly. And the vibration down on the ground from them airplanes up there at 10,000 feet was just shake the bottles off your, if you had them on a shelf in the barracks and that, to shake the bottles off your shelves. That's how much vibration just from the roar of the engines up there. But then after you went across the channel, well, then everybody went on their different bomb targets, what they was going to. And of course, I know our first mission, when we landed, we, first, Axis Sally over there, she invited us in because she knew 466 bomb group was coming in, So she was telling, we listened to it on the daggone radio because that was that propaganda radio. And so otherwise we got 3 missions in before we got shot up. And man, they hit us with that yellow noses, Goring yellow noses. They had a special trained airfield over there for them. It's crack pilots. And so they attacked us, and the radio operator, he got hit, and one of our gunners got his little finger shot off. He had the controls, and when one of the bullets come through he was in the turret, and somehow come through that turret, took his little finger off. Well, otherwise, shot the plane all up, so come back into land, couldn't get to one landing strut was shot out, so otherwise only had one wheel. And so pilot, he said, well, he's going to try and land it on this one wheel. So he put it down there, well, it didn't last very long till that wheel went down and the thing went spinning around out there on the ground. So that was all got out of it except the radio operator, because he was hit with a shrapnel and the little gunner, but otherwise the pilot and the co-pilot, well, the pilot, they sent him to the rest home, and our crew got all busted up because we didn't have them. So that was my 3rd mission, and that was, had 32 missions, and that was my 3rd mission. And so otherwise I had to fly spare then. The rest of the time I had to fly wherever one crew was missing a gunner or something, well then they had to fly with them. So otherwise it was rough because you had a new pilot practically every time you wanted to fly. Because some pilots was crazy and some of them was pretty good pilots. But otherwise you had to didn't have to take your pick, you had to take whatever they give you. So otherwise I finished up my missions with a rookie pilot. He only had, I think, about 4 or 5 missions, and our mission was down in Munich, Germany, down in France down there, and that's an 11-hour flight. And of course down there is close to Switzerland, so if you got shot up too bad, well, you could always go to Switzerland, was a neutral country. So otherwise you fly in there, they would take you down, well, and they'd send you back to the States. So this young bunch, this pilot, there was just a young crew, and on my last mission, and so it says they wanted the pilot to fly into Switzerland, So he gets up. I said, man, no, get this dang thing back to the place. I can get the heck out of this army, you know. So otherwise, they finally nursed it, and got it back over across the pond, and got back to the country. And then I said, take me back. He said, I'll give you some buzz jobs. And I said, no, just take this thing back and set it down on the ground. Well, he had to go, and he was racking over these little cities over there in England, and it looked like the daggone wing was going to take the chimneys off of them houses. He was racking that thing around. I said, get this thing back. Well, so when he landed, the pilot ahead of us was one of these Pathfinders that had bombed through the clouds. So he was late coming in, and he had a nose wheel shot out. So otherwise, when he got on the runway, well, he didn't clear the runway, cut his engines. He thought he was the last one in. Well, we was making a hot landing behind him, and so otherwise, when we hit that runway, well, I knew something was happening because he had the wheels locked, and so when the wheels hit that concrete, well, man, they started smoking. You know, smoke was flying out of both wheels, both sides of it, plane, and then they both went flat at the same time, just boom, boom, like that. Well, pretty soon we hit that. I knew we was going. I thought we overshot the runway, but otherwise I didn't know there was another plane ahead of us, and so we piled into that other plane up there. And so, man, I bailed out of that waste window, and I took off down the thing, and running across that rivet there, and the old guy was coming up there was a priest, and he says, you heard? I said, no. I said, I'm just getting out before the thing blows up. And he says, I said, this is my last mission. He said, well, ain't no way of finishing up in a bang. But otherwise, we had all kinds of missions over there that I had 32 of them, and 3 of them was crash landings. So, but I've got through all 3 of them. But our crew got all busted up after the 3rd mission, so otherwise, well, there was nothing else we could do. But otherwise, then after we got done with our mission, they flew me back to, well, I had to go to Scotland. We were waiting to come back to the States, because after 32. Otherwise, when I went over, there was 25 missions. You had to pull 25 missions. Well, otherwise, then they moved it up to 30. Well, before I left over there, they had moved it up to 35 missions. So otherwise, it was me going over there with the 24. Well, they said I could get off on 32 missions. So that's what I got off on 32 missions. So otherwise, when that was up, well, they sent me up to Scotland. I had to wait for a return back to the States. Well, we was going to ship us back on a boat. So I waited up there for about 10 or 15 days for this boat to get loaded up and to bring us back to New York. And so it was a Norwegian boat. And otherwise, that boat, I never was on a boat and ships, and we was out there on that damn ocean for, I think it was 10 days coming across, and I never made a sailor, because man, I was, that dang old boat was up and down. I know one time they had the portholes on the side of the boat, you had them open. And some days that ocean would just be like a little creek, you know what I mean, a little lake, just little weeds on it as far as you could see. And then the next couple hours later, man, there was waves higher than your thigh, but otherwise it was down there, there was always, a bunch of them was always gambling, you know, they was down there shooting crap or something, and they had these portholes open, and they was shooting on there. Boy, one of them waves hit one of them things that it looked like a ball of water come through that porthole. And water was all over the floor. I mean, but it was something different on that daggone boat. But then I still didn't get sick on it. I stayed, but sometimes I felt like it. But a lot of these guys get sicker and thinner on that thing. But otherwise, we stayed on that damn boat till we got to New York. We got New York, well, we're coming into the Statue of Liberty. Well, everybody wanted to see the Statue of Liberty, so that when the boat pulled in, everybody went to the side of the boat. That daggone ship, I thought one time you could dip, looked like you could dip water from the thing, and the other side was, man, it looked like it was 10 stories down there, you know, in the boat. But then, well, anyway, we got off of the damn boat there, and you lined up, and everybody took you off of the boat. But one thing that was really surprising was there was this one guy come over. He had you couldn't bring nothing back from England. You had your guns and all that. You had to leave, you know, pile them over there. And so he had animals. He had a little Scotch dog, a little black dog, I don't know, wasn't very big, but he had that old thing, he brought it back on the boat, and that little dog was so trained that it went to the John just like a person. He would get up on the toilet stool and go in there, and he had to go to the pot and that, and he would go underneath of that ship. It was, you had these hammocks on the side of the wall, and so it was about 2 or 3 deep. And so this lower one was only about a foot off the floor. And so the little dog, he'd get underneath them things, and he'd stay underneath there all through the daytime, never see him, he'd always be hide. And so he got that boat across, 10 days he got it across the thing, nobody ever seen it. And so he had when you got off the boat, you had a haversack on the side of your thing. It was a thing you carried your stuff in, you know. And he put that little dog in that bag. And so when you walked through the checkout lane, the guys checked you all over, you know, and signed you on out. And he said he'd go through that checkout lane. I said, man, you never get through that. He went through, they never caught that dog in that. He got through that damn checkout line with that damn dog. I said, man, So otherwise we went, then when he got over there, well, he sent the dog home, you know, where he lived, his folks, so they took it while he finished up his service then. And so then we went from New York, they sent us to Miami. Went down to Miami, Florida, and the Army had rented them hotels down there on the beach for all the returning veterans. So we had a room, and of course right on the beach, and you had well, you could do whatever you wanted to. You was on your own, but you had to take care of your own room. You had to make your beds and all that, but you could go out there on the beach and swim or whatever you wanted to do. And then you had to check in every day to the doctor. It was for people, some of them had nervous breakdowns and stuff, dreaming and bad dreams or something. And so otherwise they'd just call you in, you'd have to go down and ask you a bunch of questions and all that. And if everything was going good, well, then they would send you on out, you know, but they kept you there. And so there was 8 of us wanted to get out of the damn place because we was all feeling good. So otherwise, after we thought, well, we'd get better places to go to. So when we left, we sent 8 of us, we sent us to Biloxi, Mississippi. And so we got up Biloxi, they put us on, there was a school, Army school down there for radios, I think, or something. And so otherwise there was a school down there, and so otherwise when they sent us down there, they put us on KP. So we was pulling KP for these students and these going to school. And so that was a rough thing. We was talking about these guys back in the Miami, and they're still living up, and we're pulling 30 feet. What the hell's going on here? So, otherwise, this one guy was he was real sharp with the army anyway. Anyway, he got into the orderly room, and so finally he worked us up, and we got all of us, all 8 of us. He got us a job in the orderly room. I was a mail clerk, taking care of the mail. And there's one, some of them was on sick leave, sick call, taking care of people with serving sick call and stuff. Anyway, we all had a job to do, and so then they give us orders we could ship out. So we put down, we was going to go to helicopter school. So, so we didn't get out of the. So otherwise, this we got papers, and we carried our own papers to give. He had his own papers. So otherwise, when we signed up for this tour, well, otherwise we get we got up to this tour. Well, otherwise we was ready to ship out this the captain of the base down there. Anyway, he took us with his Jeep and hauled us to the train and bailed us out. There, whole Jeep load of our soldiers, 8 of us. And so we went we was going to Terre Haute, Indiana. So he moved us up to Terre Haute, and on the way up, this guy says, take up papers that you signed up for another tour. He said, and we'd tear them up and throw them out the train windows. And we tore the papers up, throw them out. So we get up to Terre Haute, and then people up there said, what the hell are you up here for? Said, well, he's going to airplane school. And no, you guys got too much rank, you ain't gonna go to school. So they give us a 3-day pass to Chicago. So we went to Chicago for 3 days up there, and that was something different. By that time, never was in Chicago, but how people was different in them days. I never will forget. We was getting ready to come back, catch a train to come back to Scott. Well, otherwise, what we done, they give us 5 fields to pick from. And otherwise, you could pick whichever field you wanted to go to, and you ship you out. And so I took Scott Field because that was the closest to Kansas. So I had another kid come to Scott Field. The rest of them all broke up. They went different places. So I don't know where they went, but I know this when we was up there in Chicago, we was getting ready to catch this plane or train back, and we was walking down to the station. There was an old boy. How people was different nowadays than what they are today, but otherwise, a soldier back in them days was, hell, they looked out for you, and so he stopped us and he said, where are you guys going? I said, we're going back to things. He said, how about kind of taking you up for dinner? And yeah. So otherwise, he called up his wife and told him to fix dinner, and he was bringing home three fruits, There was 3 of us. And so otherwise she fixed us a nice meal. We sat there and didn't even know the guy. From Chicago. He was up in Chicago. There's someplace in Chicago. And so we had the meal, and they took us back down to the train station and sent us off. And how they treated you, how much difference, because back then your thumb was your transportation. You go down the street and thumb, and all through Carolinas and all that, you just, no trouble at all. Even when I was out at Scott Field, out here, well, you could go to St. Louis, well, you could thumb your way to St. Louis. Hell, there's always get to St. Louis in a big hurry. Somebody pick you up, And so, otherwise, we was up in St. Louis there for, well, that's when I had, I guess I had, I don't know how many months I was over here in St. Louis before. Otherwise, I got out here at Scott Field. I mean, Scott Field there, and I was working in a laundry room, and they kept shipping them out. And so I had, I guess well, anyway, I had three times I was brought up to ship, but then the commander over there, well, he had me in the supply room, and so he'd always get me scratched. So after the third time, they said, no, definitely that man will ship. So otherwise, they sent me down to Texas. I went down to Texas, and they was storing airplanes. Well, I was bringing these airplanes back from England, flying them back here, and they had them, 2,000 of them they had out there in this revet out there. What our job was painting all the windows, plexiglass was painted with some kind of a paint, and the engines, they was putting fish oil in the engines and everything, painting the tires, and they were storing them damn airplanes down there. And then afterwards, after they got done out here, the junk dealer come in and took them. We put them all for junk. But anyway, I was there for, well, I guess the Japanese, I think they settled the war in Japan. And when I was getting my discharge. And so I got sent out. I know that whenever they announced that, when we was soaring these airplanes, they had these shells, but they shot flares. They would shoot. There was signals in the service. I mean, red. Well, you had danger and all this stuff. Anyway, well. They were like pistols with these big shells, and so we'd take them out of the airplane when we were storing them, and then when they had that celebration that night, everybody was shooting them damn flares. And there were burnt spots all over the yard out there. Some of them shot through the windows and the damn barracks and everything else. But that was so young. But then I got my discharge there and went back to Kansas and got discharged out there in Leavenworth. And that was when I got out. Then of course, I was stationed here in Scott Field, so I met my wife when I was down here in Scott Field. So otherwise, when I got discharged and I come back down to St. Louis, and so then I got married, and so then never went back to Kansas, only on vacations then. But otherwise, I had my airplane mechanic school behind me, and so then when I got married, my wife, then one of her mother's friends had a garage over in St. Louis, and so otherwise she says that when introduced me to this guy and had the garage, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, look for mechanic work, I guess, or something," because I didn't want to go back to farming. And so otherwise, he said, "Well, said, look me up before you go, look for a job, I said, "Okay." So I never paid too much attention to it. So when come back from our honeymoon, we was staying with my mother-in-law, and so that was on a weekend. And so Monday morning, it was 7 o'clock in the morning, I was still in bed, and my mother-in-law woke me up and says, you want to go down to," said the guy with the garage down there, said, "If you want to work, tell him to get his ass down there." So I said, "Okay." So otherwise, I went down there and I worked for a whole week down there. Never did ever see the guy. And I know the old mechanic down there that they told me to see, well, he put me on different little jobs to do down there, and so I done that, and so I worked there for a whole week. At that time, $35 is what you got. That's where you're paid. And so I worked for a whole week and never even seen the boss. And so when he come to pay me, he said $35. He says, okay. I said, I'd take anything, you know. So at that time, $35 was still pretty good money, you know. And so otherwise, I worked there then for about every week. I got another $5 raise, you know. So otherwise he filled me out, I guess, to see how I was going to do. So otherwise, I worked down there for, I guess, about 3 years. And then they built that Highway 70 through there. Well, when they went through that, they took the garage, you know, what he had. So otherwise, well, I said, I'll tell you what, when he's closing it up, I said, well, I'm going down. So down on 6th and Cole, down on St. Louis there by well, it's right there now across the street from the Rams Stadium there. Well, otherwise, that was all chicken places and all kinds of businesses down there. Well, otherwise, I opened up the garage there in 6th and Cole there, and worked very well till well, I had my businesses all in the downtown area. I had the face places and the hardwares and the banks and all that. And a lot of people who worked for the bank could leave their car and get it fixed while they was at the bank working. And so otherwise I had a big business going. And so I was there for 20 years. And then they come along there with that convention center. And so then they took all them businesses out and cleaned it out. Well, otherwise they wanted to move me to another place someplace, but then shoot, I'd had to start all over again because all my customers was all the downtown area there. So I didn't know, so I just took a settlement and I quit then. Sold stuff out of the garage. They give you the way you took your last 3 years. And that's what your settlement, you know, to move me out, because otherwise they wanted to move me, but I went back to Collinsville where I was living over there, and I worked over there for a couple of years. And even people that I had customers over in St. Louis bring their car over to Collinsville and get it fixed, you know. So I was supposed to have been noted with a good mechanic over there, with all the dealers and all that over there. So otherwise, when I moved to Collinsville, well, then my wife had done passed away, and so I didn't have nothing else to do but piddle around her. So then the roofing company, my son-in-law worked for the roofing company, and they was welding these big fuel tanks together to put asphalt in, and so they needed welders down there to weld the rivets and all that. So they asked me if I'd wanted to work a couple days a week. Yeah, I come down there. So I went down there and I worked three days. Well, it was about a week or two and ended up 13 years. So after I started working down there, then of course the roofing company had a bunch of trucks and forklifts and all this lawn equipment, roof equipment and all that with engines and that. And so they found out I was a mechanic, so they would send their trucks and all that out to get them fixed. So otherwise the boss said, hey, I'll just build you a garage and you can work right here. So he built me a big garage. It was, it's all, well, it's still standing out there. It was 100 feet long, and it was all block foundation like that, and had a 12-foot door there where we could run a semi straight on in it, you know, and it was real nice. You had a couple furnaces in there, and man, it was the best damn thing I ever had, you know. So otherwise I worked there for 13 years, and then I had a knee replaced, and when had that knee replaced, well then I kind of backed off a little bit, so otherwise I had to hire another mechanic to come in to take my place while I was going. So otherwise, after that, well, I kind of just backed off and left them go ahead and took a retirement. Of course, I was old enough then to get a retirement, so I just took retirement and put the mechanic business over there. But they're still in business over there now yet, Taylor Roofing. And so otherwise, he built me a garage, and I had all kinds of, well, they had all equipment to forklifts and backhoes, and of course then they had warehouses up in Springfield and all around, so otherwise I'd have to take care of the equipment up in Springfield and drive clear up there maybe a couple times a month to take care of the equipment up there, and down in around south down in towns down south too. They had warehouses down in there, so it was kind of scattered around the country. But otherwise, that was. But then after I took a retirement, well, then I went to Collinsville and stayed over there, and then was there for 32 years in Collinsville, and then my wife's daughter lived here in Fairmont City, and so otherwise I stayed with her, or I mean, she wanted to come over with Debbie. So otherwise, we moved to, well, I had 7 acres over in Collinsville, and after I had my knee and that replaced, well, it just got too much to take care of, because otherwise I mowed the grass and everything was like a park out there, and then I went to after the park. Well, I went to Fairmont City, and I stayed here. Well, we're yet for 30-some years over here now. And but of course, my wife now, she's got the Alzheimer's, and so she's at home right now, and so it's kind of hard to take care of. But otherwise, the reason we moved to Fairmont City was from Collinsville was her wife's daughter lived here in Fairmont City, so she wanted to move over here with her daughter, so we moved over here, and then after we got here, then they moved out. So otherwise, we were still over here in Fairmont City. So how much longer got? Long enough?
You are good. If
Yeah.
you have any other stories, feel free to
The one
talk
thing I
about.
got right now, I got to blame cancer here on my daggone chin. And I went to Barnes Hospital, and he said that they'd have to operate on it. They was going to take some of the bone off, and then they're going to give me chemo and all kinds of stuff. And I said, with my age and that, and well before, well, I guess about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, I was doing a favor, taking the guy's coat back over here on the Fairmont, and it was at night, and there was steps up there, and I fell off these steps and broke my shoulder up, and so I went to the hospital, and so I was there for 3 months in the blame hospital with a broken shoulder, and I think the hospital, they didn't take care of my wounds. It was all skinned here on my arm and that, and got infection in it and all kinds of bad. I think I never got out of that. So I knew took 3 months to get this daggone shoulder straightened out. And I knew if I went to this operation over in Barnes Hospital, well, I'd end up in a nursing home. And that would be the end of my career anyway, so I thought shoot, I'll just forget about the cancer and just let the thing take its course. So otherwise, I think I'm putting some kind of oil on it. It's supposed to stop the cancer. I don't know whether it's doing any good or not, but otherwise it's been about a year now and I'm still kicking along. So I said I'll run it till it quits, and then whenever it quits, well, maybe by that, because I knew if I took an operation, well, then you'd be Barnes Hospital. They keep you 3 days, then they send you to a nursing home or someplace because you wouldn't be able to take care of yourself. And so that would be the end of your thing. As long as I can putt around and do something on my own, I'm going to keep doing it till the wheels fall off. And then, because Ben, when you get up to be 94 years old, well, you ain't got too many more years to go and live anyway. So I just let the time run out now. So see whatever happens, we'll do. So I guess that's probably about all of my medals and that. Well, these are my medals here from what I've collected here in my tour duties. Was the Air Force medals and the mechanic medal there and my Distinguished Flying Cross. This is the Distinguished Flying Cross. That's the one that most of it was given to me by the commanding general down there. And there was just a picture of that when I graduated out of, that was when I got discharged from the service. And then that other little picture there is what I got from my general, giving to me my Distinguished Flying Cross. And this here was something, my 80th birthday, Fairmont gave me that salutation from Penny. Penny was, Scott Penny, set me up to Springfield on that one. So otherwise, I just brought that along in case I thought it was pretty good. I mean, for them to got me registered up in Springfield with all the representatives anyway. So I guess I've made that's about all I can think of right now. And I know I've enjoyed life all my. I mean, of course, there's been some bad times, but otherwise, usually, I mean, everybody's been good to me, and I don't think I got no enemies, and I know I haven't got none, so otherwise, everything is go till the end of it.
Is there anything you would like to leave for future generations? Any words of advice or anything you would like to pass on?
Well, for these kids today, I mean, I see so much reading in the paper of these young kids of stealing and busting into cars and stuff like that. To me, I don't know where they're coming from, but to me, I mean, if they're going to live a life, I mean, and they're going to have to straighten themselves out and start doing a little bit of things. I mean, everybody wants to get paid for everything you do. I mean, there's more out there than just money. I mean, if you can just have to me, like me, I ain't rich. I ain't got a lot of money, but I mean, I still enjoy life and all that. I don't need to have all kinds of money and not enjoy life. But I think these kids are, I don't know, they ought to find something to do besides running these telephones and computers and that, and get a little bit more. You never see them out cutting grass or nothing like that anymore, where Otherwise, to me, that was a work habit to get into and learn to work a little bit instead of everything being given to you. I mean, you got to work for it. And I don't think too much was ever given to me. I mean, whatever I got, I had to work for what I got. And so, but anyway, that's the only thing I can figure. I mean, I think the kids today has got to change their attitude and try to help get into things and do a little bit of work or get better schooling or something on different things. Now, I got one of my cousins, or my grandsons, he was starting to college. He went 1 year, or 1 semester in college, and he says that college wasn't for him, so he went to this Rankin school. My garage over here, I put a roof on built a roof on my garage, so son-in-law come over to put the shingles on. And so he was just out of high school, so he come with his dad and helped him put the shingles on. So he told my wife, he said, you know what, I kind of like that kind of job. So he went to this Rankin school and he graduated.